Hey, welcome to this talk that will handle about sensitive, being part in pilots and use cases dealing with senior or elderly care. All as part of our annual Sense customer, partner and user meeting and webinars. I hope you will have some interesting 20 minutes approximately. And let's start. My agenda. The agenda for this talk will be a little bit of a global view. Some background on 3 topics. I will do a step into IoT. Not all of us are maybe totally familiar with what we mean, and I will just give my own view on it. Some points on sensitive, which of course you will get in many of the other seminars as well. Some repeat might be okay, and also functional for the rest of this talk. Thereafter, a general background and ideas about senior care or elderly care. Both my own ones as well as some data and facts from Europe and Sweden. After that, we will go to a real example where we from Sensitive have been active over actually quite a longer bit of time. We will get to there. And of course, I will finalize with some takeaways from the things we have been discussing. I hope you will enjoy these couple of minutes. First of all, we are all surely aware of the 2030 global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. From a very personal perspective, I think that making sure that we humans can survive living on this planet is our largest challenge, actually. In other words, we must have it as our common goal to have the climate not spinning out so that we humans cannot live here anymore. This includes, of course, major activities on carbon and other emissions, and normally that immediately leads to us handling our energy consumption, energy production. And in its turn, large parts of that are handled, for instance, in buildings, in cars, in traffic. Many of those cases are leading to use cases today where sensitive is active. I have a list on the slide there, which you can look at. Some of those we are very highly involved, especially in real estate. Other ones maybe a little bit more on the side. Again, from my personal perspective, the other one, besides the climate change and the actions we take on that one, is definitely to achieve well-being for elderly. There are some very low-hanging fruits that I can almost say I'm quite frustrated about, that we haven't come much further than we generally perceive today. I will get to that, and it will be part of this talk. So you can look at the examples. There are many, many more, and surely after this seminar and the webinar and the whole Sense1 day, you can contact us if you want to discuss other ones. This leads me, next point on the agenda, some background. Not all of us are as familiar maybe with IoT, so I step some step back in time. Actually, I like the Gartner curves. Those curves show what is very hyped in media, words that start to pop up, which have not popped up before. And a nice one is the one that you see here from 2012, which was the first time that IoT suddenly popped up as a term that was getting a lot of hype. So on the left side, you see IoT 2012 coming up. IoT platforms even came up 2016. Wow, okay, that was a hype too. Now, normally these hype curves, things fall down before things become real, and that gap is 5 to 10 years. That's nice, because that means that from at least 2017, but also for platforms 2021, things should start to happen in the real world. And actually, that's what we at Sensitive are noticing already from the last years, but definitely more and more escalating with many use cases and very large cases presently as well. Things are really happening. Great. IoT. It is about sensors and actuators, because the word says Internet of Things. And those two are the things that we normally talk about. if we are technical people speaking about IoT. The sensors, they are measuring things, they are coming with information to us, they are delivering us data and other information. The actuators, they are handling things. They have the ability to activate, to make things happen, to perform. The advantages of these connected things that come with real-time, new and more information are plenty. We can share information. We can also combine information. An example, if you know the temperature in the building and you know the prediction about the weather, those two are already two data sets that give you a little bit more insight about maybe if you want to up or down the heating in your building. Just simple. There are possibilities for automations. They are reactive ones, very simple rules. They are called in the technology world if this then that, IFTTT. They can also be really proactive. We all expect this to come in the future. Already machine learning is a topic that is hot, and AI is definitely on the Gartner curve. How much is real? That will we see the next couple of years. IoT also helps us to make things more effective and increase efficiency. We can, with lower costs, get this information, with lower costs, get things activated. We get also a lot of new values, maybe even new revenues, if we own data or information and can deliver it to other ones. Most probably, if you know things better, you can make quality better. So higher quality should also be included. All those things should be able to increase our well-being, and in the end, we started with that sustainable development. I took a little picture from some IoT use cases, for instance, applicable to dustbins in a city. Before we have scheduled maintenance, if we have sensors that tell us the dustbin is almost full, we get increased insight. Maybe we have other information to collect as well, like it's a sunny day, this is a park. We can expect the dustbins to be full more quickly. And that means that we can have demand-driven people emptying the dustbins instead of scheduled. We can, in time, maybe automate this, and we can even make it predictive. We just know when summer comes and we have a nice park in town, and we know that there is no rain tomorrow, that's the time to plan and look for information of acting. So from scheduled maintenance to predictive is just an example where IoT is playing a role. Increased quality, higher efficiency, higher effectivity. I hope that's a good example. In Sensitive, we are truly an IoT company. First of all, we speak about strips. We do that in a number of other talks these days as well. Strips, very much a product that is having an extremely high battery time so that you don't have to pay a lot of money for replacement, etc., etc. Very important. The form factor and other things make the strip a very useful sensor. So we are proud of having it. The other part of the sensitive IoT is Ukio. That's something else. That is the platform. It's a horizontal platform, an IoT platform. It is an open platform. It is meant to be like an infrastructure. So, for instance, if you are a real estate company, you normally have between 30 and 60 systems in your real estate. If all of those become IoT systems, you will be implementing sensors, actuators, gateways, technologies, and you will do it 30 or 60 times from different suppliers. We call that vertical solutions. It's much better to have one horizontal infrastructure where all the applications, the things you do with information, yeah, that can be 30 or 60 apps, fine. That is for us Ukio. Ukio is a horizontal infrastructure, a platform. It's taking care of all your elements, know where they are, it's taking care of the security, and it's taking care of being able to easily share data if you want and how you want. And last but not least, it is sharing its interaction with the rest of the world through one API, one point of contact, you could say, for any applications. Why is this important? Let's go back to, for instance, our smartphones. Suppose you would have, like I just said, 30 different operating systems in your smartphones, or you would walk around with 30 different smartphones for 30 different applications. Would be a hassle. This is the same with the open integration platform for instance, buildings or cities. You need only one infrastructure, one operating system. That is UKIO. A little picture to show that it is very horizontal, that it is cross all the boundaries for vertical solutions. And services, those can be delivered on top. And you get your information with and through one API. Now, third point that I was going to talk about regarding background information, that is about elderly, and I will get to the care. I can quickly show you this slide and you will already see, and you will already know quite some of the things that I show here. We have, in at least what we would call the Western world, an aging population. The numbers are increasing. So the number of people in pension age are, because of longer life, which in itself, of course, is very nice, dramatically increasing. At the same time, if somebody, like people used to do for 30 years ago, would already at the age of 70 decide to go and live in an elderly home, not necessarily a care home, but just an elderly home, that used to be quite normal for social reasons and for other practical reasons. However, a person in an elderly care paid by the community is roughly costing €3,000 per month. We have already seen in society that the last 10-20 years, this means that many people are not so easily getting into an elderly home anymore. And more, the elderly homes have become care homes. That means if you really cannot live at home anymore, that's when you can go into care of the community of the city. This has also led to two big problems, and I call them challenges, and it's the two that I will come back to a bit later. The largest problem for elderly people is loneliness. It is a really big problem. It means that people can spend weeks without more human contact than maybe just in the local shop with other people. This has led to some societies putting volunteer projects into place, how to make sure that the elderly do meet other human beings. This is very nice if those projects go along. Otherwise, loneliness is a very sad thing, and it's definitely not in line with the goal 13 of well-being. But I want to take the second largest problem, because that is one that we can connect to IoT today. The second largest problem for elderly people above the age of 70 is fall accidents. Between 75 and 80% of all injuries for people in 70 plus are fall accidents. That is a lot. And EU-wide, that is more than 8 million injuries per year. Of those injuries, that means 55,000 actual deaths. That being very sad and harsh. The other part is that all the ones that do not lead to death lead to a lot of misery. They lead to pain. They lead to many months of not being able to function. But from a financial reality for society, they lead to massive costs. Imagine the mention of €3,000 per person in a normal elderly care. In hospital, the costs are much higher. And this means that the fall accidents with 70 plus people in the EU stand for at least €3 billion per year. Now, this is actually mind-boggling, and it's frustrating me a lot, because IoT should be able to solve this. And we will get to that a little bit later. So, hip fractures, problems with broken bones because of fall accidents, it's a major problem for the elderly. What are the possibilities with IoT? We can measure a lot with IoT. That's how we defined it. We can assist decisions. We can make alerts. We can implement technical things. Advantages could be that people can live at home prolonged because their life is made easier. They have increased support, not necessarily from other humans, which would have been good for problem 1, but we're now solving problem 2. They can have low integrity impact surveillance. We have had many cases in Sweden where people have been talking about camera surveillance of the elderly. That is not necessary at all. We can have many other sensors that have some form of surveillance, but are far less imposing on privacy. We have positive monitoring, which I will come to, by relatives, sons, daughters, other people around the seniors' social network. At some point, this can be taken over by the city. The gains, yeah, we saw that 3,000 euro per month are the costs for somebody not living at home anymore. So simply financially, there will be far reduced costs for the communities, our cities. But it could also be far more comfortable living for the people that more or less are obliged or chose to stay at home. Safer living is definitely also a part. So, with those backgrounds, you can almost guess where the example will lead us, and I will get there now. I will tell you about a project that we did where we were allowed to be part, I should say, in the city of Halmstad.
Det här projektet som drivs av Halmstad kommun tillsammans med oss andra är ett projekt där vi digitaliserar ett antal lägenheter för att skapa trygghet och utvärdera de digitaliseringsmöjligheter som finns utav en vanlig persons boende.
Vi står inför stora utmaningar med allt ökade behov och minskade resurser.
Målet är att vi ska skapa boende där man har möjlighet till ett mer självständigt liv och där man också har en ökad livskvalitet för våra äldre och där vården och omsorgen faktiskt har möjlighet att flytta hem till hemmet.
För att hitta lösningarna på framtidens utmaningar så behöver vi arbeta tillsammans men också vara lite modiga. Och jag tycker verkligen vi har varit både modiga och nytänkande i det här projektet.
It is a city large enough to have the possibility, the means and the ambition to try things, make things happen, be modern, try new technology. It is small enough for projects, etc., not to die in bureaucracy or largeness. So this project started, and this is very exciting, 2013. We saw on the Gartner hype scales that 2012 IoT came up. So this was just after that point. And there were lots of thoughts of things that would be possible. And already giving you the spoiler on the slide, the city won a prize for the best e-solution in public life in Sweden in 2019. So it was called highest society beneficial e-service in Sweden. And in between there was of course the start of ideas. There was a getting together of the main players, the local real estate company, the fiber operator having a lot of technical knowledge, and of course the people responsible for care of the elderly in the town. The benefits already there as well were clearly this 3,000 a month for staying at home, but it should also be a higher quality of life for the people involved. It took time, it took discussions, it took decisions, political decisions, money decisions, but somewhere in 2016 there was a proof of concept project decided, and the things really started to move. That was also the time that technical implementations That means IoT devices, amongst those the strips, and other devices were implemented. It became real because the real estate company was willing to order, meaning to pay for this, and Sensitive was one of the companies delivering. So just wanted to show you the timeline. Why? You could say it's slightly frustrating. You could also say at least we got there and at least it happened. And this means that now Halmstad itself is doing quite some next steps, but it also means that other projects within Sweden, outside Sweden, it could just be copied. It's there for people to take. And there were a lot of things that we, of course, learned from this project. The background, it's easy to say afterwards. Of course, things did not always move exactly as linear, but there were generic points that the whole project had to talk about and learn. It was important to involve many participants, to involve higher management, and to see to it that people were actually willing to work in this project together. Sounds like superfluous, but it's obviously often not. Of course, the project, for Sensitive, this was interesting. We are a technical company. The project was about testing technologies, trying some devices, abandoning them, trying others. It was also important to start to look at business models. Who will in the future pay for this? Who will gain? Who will hopefully not lose, but be interested to also participate? And business models are one part. It also, the last point you see, is about responsibilities. So agreements. Once you have a business model, you will probably have to come into agreements as well. So a very important point in general for proof of concept projects in IoT is not to forget the agreements. And this is the other point. We also had to test operations. Who is doing what when it's operational? Who is having what responsibility? So those were important points in the projects. For us, from Sensitive and for myself, we saw most of the things from the outside. We were not the one driving the project, so just observing and having subjective views on that. For us, however, our contribution was, of course, management of the technical project parts. So quite some of the devices, the UKO platform, and some of our sensors were allowed to be there in there too, with their long battery life and with their non-visibility and very useful functions indeed, like measuring water leakage under the sink, measuring door open or window forgotten to close, and things like that. UKO itself, of course, delivering its standard values like element management, data security, but also openness and possibility for people if they want on how to share data or how not to share data. This was our part in the project. What did happen? What was implemented? For us technological people, it was about quite a number of different sensors. Some to be named. We measured temperature, which could then also be part of steering the temperature. We measure water consumption. I will come back to that. Water consumption can be, if there is water consumption, middle of the night and there is no movement, then this could mean a leakage, for example. But water consumption can also be part of important patterns for seniors. Motion sensor, of course, not a camera. And of course, the elderly can choose when and how these data are shared with others. For instance, only at night, not during the day, or whatever. There were other digital devices. I will come to that. Automated LED lighting, of course, a major thing in my case for preventing fall accidents. There were fire alarms, different ones. The one in the cooking hood actually able to even extinguish fires, very interesting. There were digital locks that can be steered. Rights to those locks can be given to caretakers by the people living in the apartment. There was even a robot cleaner to have another comfort digital device. And there are thoughts, of course, to extend the list. Health sensors would be a very good thing. Again, if of course the participants, the people living in the apartments would like that. But a heart rate control, oxygen level in the blood control, if people would like that and would feel actually more safe, especially living alone, that would be very good additions to the kind of measurements that could be added. This was what we did in the project. Advantages for the users, of course, direct comfort, temperature, direct comfort, being able to see on the iPad whilst reading a book who is at the door through the peephole function with the camera, very handy. Handling your doors and your rights to who is allowed to come in and not come in, also very convenient. Assistance with the cleaning, some automation if they want, with lights going on when the sun goes down or when it starts to become evening. Even some possibilities to help memorize things on the iPad. Indirect, now I come to that point. Trends and alerts. We have a number of partners, and it's not highly implemented, but we see it in many other cases, where of course the next step, which I'm really hoping that it will come soon, and many more cases for many elderly. Pattern changes are very good. Again, no intrusion on your privacy so much, but if son or daughter is allowed to see that mama is actually every day between 7 and 8 always getting up, putting up the tea kettle, going to the toilet, moving around. That would mean that a simple alert if our mother is today not up at 8 would not be a strange thing. And that would mean that we could call our mother and say, hi, how are you doing? You're normally always up at 8. Today you're not. We agreed that it was okay for me to see that. Are you okay? No, I'm not feeling so well. And then a talk can follow. This can be by relatives if the elderly person is not under the care of a community or a city. But of course, gradually, if it would be under the care of the city, this could be a civil servant making that call. We have already seen that movements, water consumption, some other things are perfect indicators for saying something about the normal well-being or maybe some slight deterioration in the life of the elderly person. Again, many of those living alone. So here IoT in my world would actually be a massive add-on and have a lot of possibilities to make sure that we can take better care. Even if I live 200 kilometers distance, I can have some feeling about how my mother is doing. So that would for me be a massive advantage actually. There we go, and I will get to some of the takeaways. Little side step, and I stole this one with pride from my dear colleague Robert, whom you will see in some of the other webinars, because he was having a talk recently to some very high civil servants in this beautiful country of Sweden, and lifting these 3 points. And I actually thought they were very good, because competence, courage, and managing, those are the things that good IoT projects or good IoT implementations need. And competence, we only started to talk about IoT 2012, and then it was hype. So maybe from 2016, 17, 18, some competence is building up. Definitely in companies like ourselves, definitely in some of our partner companies. So competence is starting to become available, but many people out there may feel that there is a lack. Then contact us and start your learning curve together with us. We've seen that in all these projects, for instance, the one about the elderly care, there was also courage needed. It needs some individuals that will step out of their comfort zone and are willing to make, maybe a little bit of a risky choices to start doing things. And when you start doing things, you have to manage. You have to manage what you are working with. You have to manage things, especially in Internet of Things world. You have to manage people, you have to manage material, you have to manage contracts, you have to manage shareholders, people interested, not unimportant. So these are the three things that we also learned in the project that I discussed, but in many, many of the other use case projects that we do in Sensitive, that these are actually the 3 parts that have to be in place. So not so much technology, but 3 other things. And the takeaways in the case that I was talking about and the elderly. Again, competence. We had a long and maybe one could think slow project. And of course, a project starting in 2021 can now be much faster. But it was a learning and educating process for all people involved. And all of us are now able to share and go on like this seminar. A lot of these competence, a lot of this knowledge, a lot of this start of learning points for customers and partners is available with us at Sensitive. We have done 40 plus different use cases already. More and more together with partners. So those also have a lot of competence and knowledge that you can use. And in some cases, there's reference cases, there's customers who are proud and pride themselves in that we made this journey together, and they are there to help other people too. Courage, the definition from the dictionary, ability to overcome fears and act in a risky situation. Well, the goals on a global scale are massive. I spoke about the energy and the climate, but then I went down to the goal of just making sure that elderly people would not fall and break a hip at night. It is so simple. I want to say it now. In the case which I spoke about, of course, the sensors will notice if somebody is getting up at night. Most of the hip fractures and the problems with the fall accidents that I mentioned happen actually at night because somebody wants to go to the bathroom but is doing so in the dark. So putting on some simple sensors and some light little LED lamps to make that walk to the bathroom and back a bit more safe. Remember, 55,000 deaths on fall accidents, of which a large chunk is actually going to the bathroom at night. We should be able in so many cities, in so many places, to make this a professional service. It's just one. And I think that most of the people looking and watching and listening here, they can contact us and just do it, because the gains are so big. So I want to finalize with our general slogan that we have in Sensitive. Think big, start small, scale fast. And the first two, think big. Think about how you maybe in your community, in your city, can prevent people breaking their hips whilst going to the bathroom at night because they're living alone and they don't have their light on. This should be able to scale very fast to many, many, many of our 100,000 cities in Europe. I really hope that we can be a small part in that. I hope you have some very nice webinars. I hope that you could follow my logic and that I was able to give you some interesting thoughts. Thank you very much.